Hello my friends, welcome to the channel. I'm the Electric Viking, great to see you. Nio's CEO, he's made some very strange comments. In fact, he continues to make strange comment after strange comment. Lately he's been bashing Tesla pretty routinely, and now he's made some claims that, well, they don't really stack up in any way, shape or form to reality. I just want to say a big shout out to our Patreon supporters. Thank you so much for what you do. It's so good to have you because this channel would not exist without you. Also our YouTube members. You can get access to some of our videos a few days in advance if you become a YouTube member of the channel. I'll put a link to our Patreon page and our YouTube member sign up page in the description. Nio is planning to launch 2 new brands soon. One will produce cheaper EVs to rival Volkswagen in Europe. They're saying around 30,000 euros. The Chinese brand is confident it will achieve its target of becoming profitable in 2023. Now, it's true that Nio already sell EVs in Europe, but only very small numbers currently. One of the reasons why their vehicles are still fairly expensive in Europe. And for example, the Tesla Model Y is a lot cheaper. It's around about 40% cheaper than the equivalent Nio model. And one of the reasons for that is that Nio sells their cars through distributors. There's no current Chinese cars being sold in Europe through their own brand. So it does add some price on top having that distributor in between. Nio is planning to launch these brands, but it hasn't given any specifics or details on if they'll make them themselves, if another car company will make them for them, which is most likely, what batteries they'll have, how many they'll be able to produce, what factory they'll be built at. There's really nothing here. So the first we're hearing about all of this is, well, we heard a few days ago, Nio said we're going to sell an affordable EV for $30,000. The same day they said Tesla cars are crap, they suck or something along those lines. If you want to see that video, I'll put a link in the description. And now they're making some claims that I think are so outlandish, possibly the Chinese government should... I mean, I'm not really into government control, but I do think that if you're misleading investors, which is clearly what Nio's CEO is doing, he is clearly intentionally misleading investors to try and boost the stock. This is worse, in my opinion, than saying we're going to go private. I mean, I don't think Elon should have done that, but I think this is worse because this is just completely bogus claims that Nio are making. Here's what they said. They plan to not follow Tesla's price cuts. They won't cut the price of their cars to follow Tesla, but they also claim that Tesla doesn't influence the market, whether that's China or anyone else, because they have less than 10% of the car market. So Tesla is really irrelevant to the company. That said, Tesla does sell a lot more cars in China, which is Nio's home market, than Nio does. And other automakers have copied Tesla, followed Tesla with the price cuts in China. So I'm not sure that Nio's CEO is correct. He's the only one who's saying that Tesla doesn't influence the EV market anywhere, whether that be China or anywhere else. According to Electric, the interviewer asked Lee if he believes Nio will lose market share to Tesla, and this is what he said. No, our comparable models are already priced around 20,000 higher than Tesla's prices. That's not our core segment. Now, is that actually true? Are comparable models priced 20,000 higher than Tesla's? Well, no, they're not actually. That's not correct. It's approximately $10,000 higher. The CEO said it's important that cars hold their value, and these price cuts reduce the EV's residual value. He believes that such moves are bad for customers. Probably what's worse is going bankrupt, which is what I believe will happen to Nio. In fact, I'm more confident in Nio going bankrupt than I am about the bankruptcies of many companies who you guys believe, and I believe will have a high likelihood of bankruptcy. I think, for example, Ford, who have a lot more debt than Nio, are much less likely to go bankrupt than Nio, because Nio are spending, they're like basically crack cocaine addicts at a crack cocaine store, and they think they've got unlimited credit. Basically, they stole someone's credit card, and they're just spending up until that card is cancelled. And then what do you do after that? That's what Nio are doing. They love spending money. But keep in mind, Nio are one of the few automakers in the world that are well known but don't really make their own cars. In fact, right now, they don't make any of their own cars themselves. JAC make their cars for them. Now, Nio are building a factory where they will build their own cars. But we don't know how many cars they'll actually produce themselves from that factory. Now, Nio's CEO said that he has a lot of respect for German luxury automakers, but not for Tesla. He said that Germany has much catching up to do with electric cars compared to China. And he said that especially is around software and technology. And he said that Nio plans to fuel electric car growth in Europe by launching 2 new EV startup brands. So Nio will have 3 different brands: the Nio brand, an affordable brand, and we don't know what the other brand is yet. They haven't actually said what that is. So this is the first we've heard of this 3rd brand Nio says it will launch. Nio will use one new brand to help cover the growing demand for small and inexpensive electric vehicles priced at less than 30,000 euros. The brand will be firmly aimed at much larger automakers such as Volkswagen. And then they said an interesting thing about Volkswagen. Lee claims that China has a 20% cost advantage over Europe and the US, which will help the situation. He didn't elaborate much on the 2nd new brand, so we don't know anything about that yet. He said, as far as the price is concerned, we are attacking Volkswagen more than before. The new brand will target European countries with mass market cars, starting with France, Italy, and Spain. Now, to be fair, in this area, Nio are at a huge disadvantage. They don't have a huge factory. They don't have their own battery production. They don't have their own economies of scale. They're not producing large numbers of vehicles. They only make 10,000 cars a month. And those numbers haven't really increased much over the past couple of years. They've increased a bit, but not a lot. Nothing compared to other rivals, such as Aion. Aion, for example, sell cars at around about a Tesla price, but they're spanking the pants off of Nio. Their growth is remarkable. So you've got some EV companies in China where they're seeing enormous growth. BYD and Aion, 2 perfect examples of a massive positive growth story. Nio is not one of them. Nio sales are moderately increasing. Some months they're staying flat. Really, they're seeing not a whole lot of change in the sales of their cars. Now, you would expect otherwise, right? You would expect this segment to be growing for Nio. But I'm not. I'm curious to know how Nio plans to do all this stuff within a short period of time, because obviously there are rivals such as BYD who are ramping production of EVs that are affordable, where they make the batteries themselves. They make a lot of the components that go into those cars themselves, and they have a big advantage over Nio. They're already making them. They're making them en masse. They're making millions. This year they'll probably sell around 3.6 million cars versus Nio's maybe 120,000. So how exactly Nio plan to compete with BYD, who will be their direct competitor in this more affordable segment, remains to be seen. Nio's so-called claims on cost advantages of affordable EVs out of China as well are difficult to kind of understand, because first of all, they don't make them themselves. So they're going to have a bit of a cost disadvantage because they have to get someone else to make the cars for them, these affordable EVs. And if they make them themselves, they still have to ship them from China to Europe. And there are taxes and charges involved, plus the shipping charges. It's going to take them a while to ramp up as well. I'm not really convinced that this strategy makes any sense. And then the 3rd brand, I mean, they haven't even outlined what this 3rd brand is. I honestly think Nio are just making stuff up as they go along to try and boost the stock price. I honestly think this will come to almost nothing. Nothing will make it come of this. Nio's cars are great. Don't get me wrong. This is not about the cars. The product themselves are actually very, very good. But like I said, they don't even make them themselves. They've got to be actually examined for what they are. At least other companies, those they're competing with, say for example, Nio, they believe their direct competition is Mercedes. And it is. That's correct. Nio's EVs will stand up in terms of quality and ability versus Mercedes EVs. In fact, in some cases, they're better. But will Germans prefer to buy a Nio, a Chinese Nio, versus a Mercedes vehicle? Well, at the moment, the answer to that is a definite no. They're not. And when it comes to price, I'm not convinced that Nio's pricing strategy with their EVs will be a winner. For example, they're pricing them at a premium Mercedes price in Europe, and thus far, it's not really working. They're selling very few cars in Europe. Now, Nio recently started deliveries of the flagship EC7 electric SUV, and the brand is ramping up battery swapping stations. It has 5 upcoming new electric vehicle models in the pipeline, meaning it'll have about 12 different electric car models for sales of 10,000 cars per month. And it's also touting its lead over rivals with regard to software and technology. Now, no one really knows exactly what its leads are. Like, it doesn't outline, it doesn't say, well, we've got higher energy density batteries, doesn't make its own batteries. We've got better motors. As far as we know, it doesn't make its own motors. It plans to in the future, but it doesn't today. So yeah, it's good, but I don't really understand what Nio's CEO means when he says we have these great advantages in software and technology, and then he doesn't actually say what those advantages are. Now, Nio's CEO went on to say that the goal is to be profitable this year as previously guided. Nio have never made a profit in the history of their company for a single quarter ever, or a month, or any period of time that anyone knows of. We've never seen them make a profit. And currently, they're building swapping stations out all over China and all over Europe, battery swapping stations. Of course, they're only for Nio EVs. So there's a small number of EVs for a very large number of swapping stations. If you think about it, they're selling 10,000 cars a month. They've got more than 1,000 swapping stations in China. They're building them out in Europe, but there's very few cars in existence to actually use them. I'm not sure this is going to play out the way that Nio's CEO think it does. In fact, I'm confident that it will not. I think there's a little bit of hubris going on here, but I could be wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you for watching.